All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We're continuing on with our summer sessions of the world's most exciting classroom for about another probably 3 or 4 sessions. We'll have these 30-minute events where we have an uplink from the ship. We have a Darwin leader join us, the curiosity of the week. And then once we get into September and we have all of our classrooms back in North America and Europe, we will start our full-hour events again, working in experiments and Kahoot quizzes, more guest speakers, and things like that. So the first thing we're going to do is take a quick look at where the ship is right now. Let's make this map a little bit bigger. So the ship is out in the Pacific. It is making its way towards the Cook Islands, but there's no crazy rush on this leg. So you can see if I zoom in a little bit closer where the ship is right now. It is in Bora Bora right now. And I've got a couple little clips here I can share. So here, good morning to Bora Bora. It's like a pretty darn nice morning. And I've got a couple little images here as well. So here is the ship with the island in the background. I thought there was one more video clip here, but maybe I'm mistaken. So there we go. You can see where we are right now. The ship will make its way further out to the Cook Islands, to Tonga, to Fiji. And then eventually you can see we've got some land masses here. We've got New Zealand and Australia around November. So lots of ocean left to cover. Let's come back from that screen share. One more little clip I want to share with you before I bring in Grant, who's joining us today. It's been a while since we've had Grant connect with us. I've been holding on to this clip for a little while. This is a clip from Tom. Remember Tom and Maria were doing some amazing diving in Mangareva and Whakareva. And then they went on a dive. It's called blackwater diving. So where you go down at night, you turn on your lights, and then you see what's in the water column. Because we think about migrations, we think about whales, we think about birds, but the largest migration on our planet happens every night when microscopic zooplankton, phytoplankton, larvae, things like that in the water make their way up higher to feed at night and then sink back into the water. So blackwater diving is a cool way to get into the water and see what's in that water column at night. So I'm going to share this video clip here really quickly, and we'll take a little look at this blackwater diving at night. We're getting a nice little look here. A few jellies. I believe we're looking at siphonifer here, but we can check. You can see all delicate little arrangements, little things moving in the water, small little fish larvae. Really cool that they got to do this. Some blackwater diving out in the open ocean. Very, very cool. Next time we have Maria on to tell us a little bit about her experiences, we'll have to have her talk a little bit about their blackwater diving as well. So we're going to bring Grant in right now. We haven't had Grant join us for a while. Hey, Grant, how are you?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing great.
Awesome.
We just arrived in Bora Bora this morning.
All right. And so when did you get back on board? I know you were off for a little bit. We talked a little bit to Josh about your broken arm, but I think you're back. You're back and ready.
Yeah. So no cast. I'm I'm all healed. I did actually break my arm when we arrived in Mangareva, and so I had to fly ahead of the ship to go to Tahiti. There was a concern about whether or not I needed surgery for a little bit, but thank goodness I didn't require surgery. And so instead, I went ahead and got a head start on this project that I've been organizing, surveying birds and creating a documentary in the Tuamotu Islands. So I left off for the Tuamotus and I was working there for about 2 weeks. And then I had about 3 weeks off work. I went to Mexico, did some birding, relaxing, and then I arrived back in Tahiti on Sunday.
All right. So you shared some pictures with me that we can walk through today. So I'm going to get those loaded up. I know you and Josh were working together for a little bit. So yeah, here we go.
I sent them to you in an order that doesn't really make sense. Can we skip to the landscape pictures first?
Yeah, of course. We can jump around a little bit. There we go.
Sure. Okay, so I was working in the Tuamotu Islands, it's the largest stretch of coral islands in the world. So they cover an area, it's like 76 islands, and they cover an area larger than Western Europe. Isn't that crazy? And it contains some of the largest coral islands in the world. So these are uplifted atolls that they used to be the rims of large extinct volcanoes around which coral grew. And so that coral deposited limestone. And in some cases, the original volcanoes at the center of these islands eroded away. It became extinct. And then all that was left was a sort of ring around the islands here, left of limestone. And so in some of the cases that the islands, they're shaped like a big ring, and it reflects the original perimeter of that initial volcanic island. But in other cases, there's really weird islands like the one that you were showing here, where that initial ring, which was, just about like a ring-shaped island at like more or less right at sea level, they've actually been uplifted by tectonic forces hundreds of meters into the air. So this island is the island of Makatea. It's the largest uplifted coral island in this part of the Pacific. And this island, through crazy tectonic forces, has been lifted up from sea level up about 200 meters in the air. And so the whole island is ringed in these steep limestone cliffs that have limestone tends to be very porous. It also dissolves with slight bits of acidity in water. So you get lots of cave networks throughout this. You get freshwater springs, and it creates a really interesting landscape for wildlife. And it also it creates a little bit of a separation between the habitat that's going to be found at low-lying islands versus higher islands. So you get different plants and different animals that grow on top of this limestone plateau. And so we were there because this island is one of the only islands left in the Tuamotus that has some of its original forest and the original forest birds left on the island. So we were filming some birds and some other creatures that they used to be a little bit more widespread throughout this archipelago. And I'll talk about that clip or that video a little bit later, or sorry, that picture a little later, but it's super interesting. So these islands have a cast of really interesting plants and animals that they all have to, reach the island somehow. And they tend to be, it's a characteristic group of plants and animals that they make really good dispersers. And once they get to these islands, they establish themselves and they create this kind of iconic like Tuamotu forest ecosystem. And this is an ecosystem that you can only see in a few places left in the world. So some of those animals include, for example, we have like the coconut crabs, like the first images here. So coconut crabs, they are the largest living terrestrial invertebrate. They, when they stretch out their legs, they can get up to the size of about like if you imagine a garbage can lid, they can actually get a little bit bigger than the garbage can lid. They can weigh like up to 25 pounds. They're capable of climbing up coconut trees, and they can cut down coconuts from the coconut trees and then use these massive, powerful claws to then snip inside and then eat the coconut milk or meat from fresh coconuts. So they're called coconut crabs. In the next image here, we've got this is a young coconut crab that's here. It's actually on a coconut that's been tied to a bit of bamboo. And this is a coconut crab trap that's been laid out by the coconut crab hunters that live on the island of Makatea. So Makatea is one of the last islands in French Polynesia that still has its coconut crabs on the island, and they are still hunted as a resource. So it's a really common food source. People will gather coconuts up from the coast, and then they climb up this massive karst plateau, scaling like hundreds of meters of cliffs. We climbed it with some of these crab hunters. I climbed with one arm. We're not going to tell my doctor about that. And we made it to the top of the cliff, and then we had to walk across the plateau, which is a very rugged, eroded limestone terrain. to then get to the forest where the coconut crabs are still located. And then they set out all of these traps where they lay out all of the coconuts, which are decomposing. And then at night, they attract all of these coconut crabs that come in to feed on all the coconuts that have been brought from the coast up on top of the plateau. And so we were able to go out during the day, and we found a couple of the coconut crabs that were over there, that they were attracted by the bait at the traps. We didn't take any back with us. We did actually try one coconut crab while we were there. I think it had been collected a few days before. I've got to say, like, people said that they taste like coconut. I didn't really taste it. It did taste quite different than other crabs that I've eaten. And they have, it's like a very sort of meaty abdomen that they tuck in underneath like the main bit of their body. Coconut crabs also, like a cool thing about them is they're actually hermit crabs. They're the largest living species of hermit crab. The young ones, they will find little shells to sort of like a hermit crab, put their vulnerable soft abdomen into. And then as they get bigger, some of them will actually use old coconut shells as their shelters, and you'll see them walking around with coconut shells on their back. But then as they get older, they're formidable enough that there really aren't any natural predators other than humans that are able to attack them, and so they don't need a shell anymore. So the big ones, they don't use any kind of protective covering. But we were so fortunate to get to see so many of the coconut crabs. You could hear them at night, just like walking around, kind of tapping with their claws going through the leaves and everything. Like it's crazy how abundant they still are in this island. So as a bird specialist, there are a couple of really cool endemic birds that attracted me to the island of Makatea. Makatea is an island it's not very easy to get to. There's only about one or two transports to this island from one of the other atolls a month. There's no airstrip. You have to go by boat. And there's really not a lot of information online about how to kind of network your way onto these islands. But this bird here, this is the endangered Makatea fruit dove. It is only found on the island of Makatea. It's got some other close relatives that live on some of the other islands here. But what makes the Makatea fruit dove special is they have these like kind of bright magenta or fuchsia head crests. And they have, almost like a leaf green body that's going to blend in really well with the leaves. And they have a pale kind of highlighter yellow vent underneath their tail there. So these guys are going to be like some of the big seed distributors for fruit trees on these islands. And it's cool because we saw them next to the other big fruit distributor that's on these islands. It was the Tuamotu imperial pigeon, which is the large pigeon that's going to be, I see it in the thumbnail just a little bit down. But this was almost my perfect picture of one of the Polynesian imperial pigeons. And unfortunately, there's just a little bit of leaf here blocking like the beak. But it's still a great photo. They have almost like a little bit of a fleshy knob in front of their nose here. So the Polynesian imperial pigeons will feed on the same fruit trees that the fruit doves do. But it's interesting because watching them feed together, you can see how they avoid competition with each other, because the Polynesian imperial pigeons, they're large birds. They're about twice the size of your city pigeons. And as they're moving around the branches, they're super clumsy and they need thick branches to stand on. So they're eating the fruits that are a little bit closer to the trunks of the trees. The young Polynesian imperial pigeons, which are darker in color, they have to stay even closer. They're clumsier and they have to stay closer to the trunks. The older birds, they get a little bit more brave and they go a little bit farther out. Then you'll see them kind of break branches and stumble, and they won't be able to get out to the ends of the branches. The fruit doves, though, are much smaller and they're much faster, and they really don't stay still. They're just kind of flitting around towards the ends of the branches and getting all of those fruits at the ends of these delicate little twigs that the pigeons can't reach. And so it's cool that, we were able to see, that we call it niche partitioning in ecology, where different organisms will kind of develop specific roles that are exclusive of each other so that they don't compete with each other. And then this guy here, this is the Tuamotu reed warbler. This photo shows it doing actually a really cool behavior. So the Tuamotu reed warbler has an especially long beak for this sort of bird. And what I was seeing it do here in this photo is it was using its long beak, almost like a woodpecker, to etch away the bark on the tree and get insects that were underneath the bark of this tree. And so these islands, obviously there are no woodpeckers their way to these islands, but this is a small songbird that has kind of evolved to.
Okay, looks like we had a slight pause in the satellite connection, so let's give it a moment. This is nothing unusual when you're connecting with satellite in a really remote area. One of two things are going to happen. Either Grant's going to start moving again, or he'll disappear from the call because he has to exit and re-enter. So we'll give him a moment to do that. But as you can see, he's visiting some pretty amazing remote places. Oh, are you back, Grant?
I'm back. I'm not sure where he went, but
you had just finished talking a little bit about, how unique they are, kind of filling that woodpecker niche on the islands. Yeah.
absolutely. I think there may be a few more photos. Maybe if you go to the one that shows the ruined buildings, that would be interesting to talk about.
Sure.
Just a little bit further up. Okay, so one of the other things that was really interesting about the island of Makatea is it actually was the economic center of French Polynesia for several decades. So this uplifted limestone island had huge phosphate deposits that were right. Oh, hi. Uh, so phosphate was really important as an ingredient for fertilizer. And so it was really important, or it was really valuable for anybody that can figure out a way to industrially mine phosphate from these raised limestone islands. So basically what they did is they built a gigantic industrial complex. This island went from having 30 people living on the island to having more than 3,000 people living on this island. There were these massive worker villages housing all these workers. They dug by hand these gigantic pits on top of this limestone plateau into the rock. And they excavated millions of tons of phosphate from the soil, which then they transported on the island on a steam locomotive. These are the tracks here of the steam locomotive that went by one of these worker buildings here. I believe this was next to one of the warehouses. There was a little warehouse with lots of tools. And they even built a large industrial pier on the coast of this island. They used dynamite to destroy part of the coral reef so that they could access the coast with large tanker ships. And they had a whole conveyor belt. We've got footage of this where they would take the phosphate from the trains and then load it through almost like a big chute that would then use gravity to take all this phosphate down to the sea and then dump it into the holds of these gigantic cargo ships. And so millions of tons of phosphate were harvested from this island. About 60% of the surface of that limestone plateau is uninhabitable because it's covered in holes that were dug out that are up to 2 or 3 meters across. And the biggest ones, they go down 280 meters. Isn't that crazy? And so if somebody fell in, obviously it'd be extremely dangerous.
All right. Well, our satellite is playing up with us today. It's kind of coming in and out. Let's see if we get Grant back again. Looks like there's a couple more pictures to look at. And then we have our Darwin leader waiting backstage, Maria, and we'll bring her in shortly. She's joining us from Panama today. But we'll see if we can get Grant back with us one more time to wrap up these couple pictures, and then we'll let him get on with his day in Bora Bora. We'll wrap up today as well. We have to answer last week's curiosity of the week, and then we have a brand new one for this week as well. Oh, there we go. That means he's exited. So it will give about a minute to see if he can come back in. If not, then we'll bring Maria in. Oh, there we go. All right, satellite's playing up today, Grant.
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's okay. It's a satellite. Nothing you can do about it.
Well, but we had to cross through this literal minefield. But it's really fascinating. They in the 1960s they decided that it wasn't profitable to harvest the phosphate in this way, and because of the huge coral reef that prevented them from making a large harbor for so long. This island wasn't completely strip mined like the other two Pacific large phosphate islands. So there was one in Banaba in Kiribati and in Nauru. And both of these islands were completely stripped bare. They have none of the wildlife remaining that used to be on the island. They're living in poverty now, and like the islands are sort of environmental messes. But Makatea challenge in getting to that phosphate. There were only a oh, sorry, sort of still untouched. So that's why it still is sort of the last place where you can see some of these Tuamotu birds that used to be present on a lot of the other islands. So the Polynesian imperial pigeon, this is the only place that this bird is found. The Makatea fruit dove, the only place this bird is found. It's also home to quite a lot of resident seabirds. This is a black noddy. They nest all over the cliffs of the island. They're tropic birds with big, long streamer tails that they nest on the island as well. It's home also to reptiles. There are these guys. These are Pacific skinks. So there's one genus of skinks that they are some of the best dispersers in like the animal kingdom. You find these guys like one variety of them on just about every single Pacific island, and they also tend to be pretty tolerant to disturbance. There's just so many of them, and I think they're relatively hard for invasive species to catch and eat. And so these guys are they're eating most of the insects that are in the leaf litter on a lot of these islands. And they have these like almost neon blue tails. Different species have different color tails. Or like almost like a lime green, like the different varieties have different colors. But this species, you find them just on about every single Pacific island.
All right, I think we have one more bird here to check out too.
Yeah. And we have this one here. This is one of our last endemic Tuamotu birds. This is the endangered blue lorikeet. They're only found in a couple of islands in the Tuamotus now. Were very popular for capturing for the pet trade. And so their rarity has actually made them, it's put them in more danger. So people still capture them in Rarotonga, in Rangiroa and a few of the other islands. But we went to this. Rangiroa is the third largest coral atoll in the world. I believe it's 180 kilometers from one end of the atoll to the other end. And so along, if you can imagine, shaped like an O, this but they're dotted all around the ring here of what used to be the large island. And all of those, there are some of those little islands in the south that they're still uninhabited. They don't have any introduced species on them, and they still have some of their endemic birds like the blue lorikeet. So we were able to get some good photos of them and even get some footage of them. I believe we had a Darwin Leader project on this species as well. And so they're really a fascinating little bird. They're only about this big, about the size of a sparrow, and they are the big dominant nectar feeders on a lot of these islands. So they're going to especially coconut trees, and they're drinking the nectar from the flowers, and they're helping to pollinate these trees, and they're a vital part of the communities here.
All right, and I know come September, once we have the classroom starting to come back, that we'll have a little preview of the documentary that you and Josh have been working on. So we're looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so exciting. It's an ambitious project, but I'm honestly I'm so impressed with how well it's turning out. It'll be called Tuamotu Evolution, Extinction, Survival.
Very, very cool. And then when you hit Cook Islands, Rarotonga, are you going to continue the land bird surveys?
I will, yes. So in the Cook Islands, there are two endemic birds that I'm especially looking out for. There's an endemic fruit dove there, sort of like the Makatea fruit dove, but it has a different sort of color combination and it's unique to Rarotonga and a few of the other Cook Islands. And that's a bird that, there's only about 1,000 individuals of the species left in the world. There's a species of kingfisher that's found in the forest there, a blue and white bird that they're zipping around and eating insects in the forest. And there's the Cook Islands starling. It's Apollonus something, but it's a kind of a medium-sized bird that they're singing in the trees, and they're also eating a lot of the insects as well. As we move on and we get closer and closer to New Zealand and Fiji, it's really cool because as we move from archipelago to archipelago, we kind of start adding bird families, and we start adding diversity and complexity to all of these native bird communities that are on these islands. And that's because we're closer to kind of the pools of like the biodiversity that we have in New Zealand, New Guinea, and Australia. And that's really where a lot of these birds, can source their ancestry from. And, it takes millions of years for it to happen, but these birds slowly will disperse themselves away across the Pacific Ocean, which is an amazing story in itself. That is another side project that we're working on, is kind of telling the story of how birds, make their way all the way from Australia to some of the remotest islands in the world.
All right. Well, Grant, thank you so much for letting us steal some time today. It looks like you're in a beautiful spot. Hope you can get out into the water or out looking for some birds later. And we'll probably
or both.
Well, both would be good too. Yeah. And we'll catch up with you next week, probably sailing on the
fantastic. All right. Seas. We'll see you guys then.
All right. Awesome, Grant. Thanks so much for connecting today.
Hey, thanks a lot, everybody. Take care.
All right. So we're going to spend a little time with our Darwin leader now. As I mentioned, we have a Darwin leader today who is joining us from Panama, Maria Fernanda Carmona. Let me bring her in right now. Hi, Maria. How are you?
Hi. All good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Good. It is great to have you with us. You got to visit Peru, which is pretty awesome. We'd love to hear a little bit about you to start.
Well, my name is Maria Fernanda. I'm from Panama. I'm a finance, project, and risk management manager, working towards consultancy, but most important, to the sustainability of the world. Right now, I'm the finance and project coordinator from Sustainable Ocean Alliance Panama, but also I'm been participating in different activities and programs around the world, like Youth for the SDGs with Peace Boat US, Global Youth Symposium about deep sea mining in Jamaica, and of course, Darwin leaders in Peru.
All right. So you were a Darwin leader in Peru. Specifically, you're an Ancon. So tell us a little bit about the project that you worked with.
Yeah, well, we were based in the northern coast of Peru in Ancon. We stayed on the boat. We were the ones with the privilege to stay the whole week on the boat. Yes, we worked there with the fisheries families around the coast. But most important, we work in the context of sustainable fisheries with the big oil spill that happened a few years back. So yeah, we get to talk with the fishermen, their families, and the government, the NGOs working after the spill, to get to know the whole situation and what's next for the fishing industry in Peru and Ancon.
All right. So I think the best thing for us to do is to take a look at the first video you created, and then we'll talk a little bit about how that came together. So let me get this video loaded up, and then we will take a look at it together. Here we go.
Welcome to Ancon, a coastal town steeped in history and tradition. Established 40 centuries ago by the ancient indigenous civilization of Ancon Sucre, it stands as one of the oldest settlements along the Peruvian coast.
Nosotros hemos encontrado diversas evidencias donde podemos hablar que quizás la costa central tiene una presencia de los 10.000 años antes de Cristo, desde la época precerámica hasta la época inca.
From ancient civilizations to present-day challenges, the threat of preservation brings our past, present and future.
La relevancia o la importancia de tener estos espacios de conservación, ¿no? Es el poder mantener o preservar los recursos ambientales que podamos encontrar en esta reserva, ¿no? La fauna, que es bastante representativa, pero además que también las poblaciones puedan aprovechar sus recursos de manera sostenible y que continúe siendo una fuente de aprovechamiento para ellos.
For the communities of Ancon, the sea is not merely a resource, but a way of life.
Siempre y antes del derrame o después del derrame siempre hemos hecho una preservación y conservación de nuestra área, nuestro ámbito de trabajo. Esta área de Ancon es una zona reservada, por lo tanto nosotros hacemos una pesca responsable pensando en el futuro de nuestros hijos.
Greetings everyone, my name is Fernanda Carmona, I am from Panama and I am the project leader from Ancon, Beyond the Spill.
In our journey along the northern coast of Lima, we explore the corners where the people have connected with marine ecosystems over time. From ancient migrations of species to deep-rooted presences in the current territory. Each step reveals an intertwined story between nature and humanity.
Ancon es considerado como una ensenada, ¿no? Y las primeras personas quienes poblan este lugar son personas que vienen, digamos, de las serranías, cuando se acaba el tema de los alimentos en las partes altas y en búsqueda de sustento bajan a las costas.
The Reserva Nacional Sistema de Islas, Islotes y Punta Guaneras, established in 2009, aiming to preserve the diverse marine ecosystem of Peru's Humboldt Current. The islotes, grupos of pescadores, consisted in 10 islas of Ancon, also are part of this reserve. These areas are vital for marine fauna, offering food and breeding grounds.
Y en estos sectores podemos encontrar especies representativas de fauna marina y también tenemos aves también muy emblemáticas como los pingüinos de Humboldt. Estas son aves endémicas de la corriente del Humboldt y se pueden encontrar en estos espacios en la costa del Perú y también en la costa de Chile.
For generations, fishing has sustained coastal families, but human activities threaten marine life. Lack of regulation hinders ecosystem recovery, exacerbated by disasters like Repsol oil spill. We join Pasamayo's fishermen, still grappling with the visible traces of oil 2 years later.
El agua sube, lo vuelve a lavar, otra vez se va al mar. El pez donde vive en el mar, ¿no? Y pucha, y dime, ese producto lo vamos a llevar para nuestras casas, para la venta, dime. No, sería inconsciente de nuestra parte, ¿no? Llevar un producto así a vender a los pescados o incluso hasta tu casa. Sería imprudente, ¿no? Y eso que recién estamos empezando.
It's not just the environmental risk. There are also social and family-related concerns regarding the lack of employment and opportunities.
Mi hijo mismo, él agarraba su pescado, lo fileteaba y vendía en los restaurantes. Esa oportunidad se la han quitado a todos. Y también, vamos a suponer que sea 10 años, 20 años de contaminación. Esos muchachos, esa juventud que vienen atrás de nosotros, ¿a qué le estamos condenando? Que de repente se vuelvan delincuentes porque no hay oportunidad de trabajo ya.
And this is where the questions comes in. What can we do to solve these problems? One solution is to push for more responsibility and action from both the industry and the government, as Isabel Calle from SPDA suggests.
Trabajamos digamos, en mejorar las políticas ambientales en el Perú, y específicamente en el caso de Repsol estamos teniendo un rol de veeduría, ¿no? Para ver cómo desde el Estado y el propio Repsol realmente se cumplen las obligaciones que cada uno de ellos tiene para rehabilitar el impacto ambiental que han causado a raíz del derrame de hidrocarburos.
The need to regenerate the ecosystem became a key factor in rehabilitating the sea following the environmental disaster, but it also involves working together with local communities, fishing associations, and the government. Here is where NGOs play a crucial role.
Me parece que nos falta tomar muchas acciones para la restauración de los ecosistemas marinos y para poder continuar con la pesca, en este caso la pesca artesanal, que se hace en estas comunidades que han sido afectadas por el derrame de petróleo.
In the aftermath of this environmental crisis, we are at a critical juncture where decisive actions is imperative. While we face uncertainty, we must also seize the opportunities for positive change. Through sustainable fishing practices and the establishment of marine sanctuaries, we can restore and protect our marine ecosystems. Let's learn from the past and commit to safeguarding our oceans for future generations, securing the future of Peru's coastlines.
All right. So first of all, a very great film. Really highlighted the issue, the conflicts, what's at stake with the community. But it's challenging, isn't it? Because you have obviously an industry like oil that's really important. You have the environment to protect, and also a way of life for those artisanal fishermen. So you can see how there's some conflict, and there isn't one solution, is there?
Yeah, exactly. Like as a community, government, NGOs, and fishermen, they need to find a way to make it work for everyone. And if this ever happen again, to have the actual correct response to save the oceans that are the marine environment and all that. Because the thing that happened here, they didn't have this quick response. So it starts like it was so huge at the end and
Yeah.
started to spill out, and it it was kilometers with oil ar- out the way the coastal line of Peru. So I think last June they still found oil on the beaches. So still, it haven't been like addressed correctly.
Yeah.
Correctly. So that's the thing we try to ask to the government with the fishermen and all the people involved in this project. The
Yeah.
way to have the correct response if ever happen again, because we're humans, this all been doing by humans, so it's always be this merge little error times. So yeah.
Yeah. And so, you had your experience as a Darwin leader. What's next for you? Do you have any projects you're looking forward to? What's going on next for you?
Yeah, well, here in Panama, we are working with Sustainable Ocean Alliance Panama. We have different projects in deep sea mining, in art exhibitions about the ocean conservation and stuff. We do beach cleanups. We do restoration of reforestation of trees and manglers and that. The next year, I'll be heading to do master's and PhD programs in economics and environmental management. So I think that it's my future right now.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'm glad you're able to have that experience in Peru, you know, working with the local community, some local NGOs, and seeing, you know, kind of both sides of a complicated story. So I'm glad you're able to have that experience. And it sounds like you've got a good kind of career ahead of you in ocean conservation and your studies. So that's exciting. So good luck with that.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm very grateful with DARWIN200 for the opportunity and the opportunity that is being given to all young conservationists around the world to do these kind of projects and stuff. So very thankful for that.
All right. Well, thank you for letting us steal a little bit of your time today. And we look forward to seeing the other 2 videos. I know that very soon, all the Darwin 200 leader videos will be put up on the website. So we're very much looking forward to that and seeing the other 2 in your series.
Yeah, shout out to my filmmaker, Diego Cortez, that we are finishing all the 2 videos missing. Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the week, and maybe we'll connect again soon as we continue our events.
Yeah, my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Last thing we have to do before we sign off for today is our curiosity of the week. So if you remember, last week's curiosity was something to do with a plant. So I have another one here. This is called a goldenrod. And it is a very prolific plant, especially in Canada and the US. And what we were looking at for the curiosity was this growth in the plant. And one little clue that I gave was it's not natural. The plant doesn't grow this on its own. So let's talk a little bit about what this is. This growth on the plant is called a gall. And so it is made by a little species of fly. And so this species of fly, it's called a goldenrod gall fly. It spends its entire life around and on goldenrod. And so in the early spring, when the goldenrod is starting to grow, the fly will put eggs inside of the growing stem. And as the stem continues to grow, the larva hatches and begins to eat inside of the plant. And when it does that, it also produces saliva. And that saliva has a chemical that mimics very closely the plant hormones. And so it releases that chemical in its saliva and causes this growth on the plant. So it provides shelter for this larva. It provides food for this larva. And over the course of the summer, it'll grow, and so will this gall. It will be hard and brown by the time winter comes, and then it'll overwinter in this form before the fly will hatch in the spring and come out from within this gall. So you'll often see them in the winter here in Canada. All the leaves are gone, and it's just a brown stick with a brown growth on it. These are very popular food for birds in the winter. So birds will find these galls, they will peck their way inside, and they'll eat the little larva that's growing inside. So sometimes the gall fly does not make it to the spring. It gets predated on by birds in the winter. So that was our curiosity. It is the goldenrod plant, and this is a gall growing on it that was put in there by a goldenrod gall fly in the spring. Okay, so we have a curiosity for this week that we need to get to. It is going to be an image this week of something really interesting. So next week we should be back with Stuart, our expedition leader, in the Darwin studio. He's working on recording a whole series of new experiments for September, as well as a whole series of new curiosities from the Darwin studio. We're going to have one more curiosity this week from my office. So I am going to share this picture and we're going to talk a little bit about it before I issue the challenge for this week's curiosity. So let's make sure I pick the right window. There it is. So this week's curiosity This is a photograph that I took when I was in Costa Rica a little while ago. And so when I was in Costa Rica, sometimes when you look really carefully on some of the plants, you can find insects like this wasp. You can also find ants in this form as well. So they are no longer alive, but they are kind of frozen in time. And they have these strange growths coming out of them. So our curiosity this week is to try and figure out what has happened to these wasps, to these ants. What has caused this growth? What is the process that took place that led to the death of this wasp and those growths that are coming out of it? So that is our curiosity for this week. Have a little look around to see what it might have been that caused this wasp to end up here on this leaf, kind of frozen in time, dead, and with these growths coming out of it. So what has caused these growths? What is that process? That is our curiosity for this week. If you go to classroom@darwin200.com, that is where you can send your best guess as to what caused this to happen to this wasp. What's going on here? Maybe tell a little story of what happened. So classroom@darwin200.com. Okay. Thanks so much for joining us this week. We will connect. The ship will likely be sailing next week, probably pretty close to Cook Islands and Rarotonga, where it will make its next stop. Before proceeding to Tonga, it will cross the international date line, and then we will make our way to Fiji after that, before we hit New Zealand and Australia. So lots coming before the new year. As we always end off, we like to thank our sponsors, our partners, our collaborators, without whom we wouldn't have the world's most exciting classroom. We wouldn't be sailing around the world. We wouldn't be training young Darwin leaders all over the world either. So we'll end off with a thank you to our sponsors, and we will see you all again next week.